Yeah, it's too late to fight the tears that have already been shed. It's too late to get back any friend I've chased away or who has already fled. I've chased away my sisters, and I made it clear. I deleted all my videos and contacts of Mrs. and Misters. I'm giving up in the fight I've fought for so many years. I'm getting too tired to explain, though my words are my tears. And there's no caring friend in the end who will lend an ear. And even though I now know there never was any of them, even around the bend. Take my God, wrap him in sackcloth, make him repent like David and Ahab. Let his descendants share the curse. My God, you've forsaken me. Now I'm forsaking you. Which could be worse? Oh yeah, it's too late to get back the years that have already been burned up. It's a long ago goodbye that I said from the dust that they churned up. It's too late to forgive my mom and dad. I've recently made that clear. I've rescued only me. The only friend I ever had. I'm thrown in the towel with its blood stains and crappy design. The mirror tells me to wake up. The wrinkles in the planets don't align. It's too late, for I'm no longer afraid of hell. Meth and drunken neighbors are not demons. The ones who've taken a flight are the angels I once knew so well. Oh my God, why not take a month's fast? Rent your garments, show some integrity. I swear, you reward the crooks and the liars. You've made me their sport, and I am tired. I'm tired of believing in someone who was never there. New song. Well, let's read the joke of the day. Okay, let's read the joke of the day. What's the joke of the day? Then we'll read a poem, and then we'll get to Obligated Whisper, which I try to read every single week here. Okay. And we try to read from the good, clean book, although it's fun to read a dirty one every now and then, as long as it's funny. Some of them are dumb, but so are some of the clean jokes. A mother said, "Son, it's time to get up and go to school." "Mom," her son replied, "nobody at school likes me. The students don't. The teachers don't. The bus drivers don't. I don't want to go to school." His mom firmly said, "Son, you must go to school. You are healthy, you have a lot to learn, and you are a leader. And besides, you are the principal." Never said what age she was. Okay. Let's get, I'd like you to see my Christmas tree and my rabbit. Okay, Obligated Whisper. Oh, poem. Let's read a poem. This is by Edward Field. And the poem is called Mae West. Remember her? She comes on drenched in a perfume called self-satisfaction, from feather boa to silver pumps. She does not need to be loved by you, though she'll give you credit for good taste. Just because you say you love her, she's not throwing herself at your feet in gratitude. Every other star reveals how worthless she feels by crying when the hero says he loves her, or how unhoped for the approval is when the audience applauds her big number. But Mae West takes it as her due. She knows she's good. She expects the best for herself and knows she's worth what she costs, and she costs plenty. She's not giving anything away. She enjoys her admirers, fat daddy or muscle man, and doesn't confuse vanity and sex, though she never turns down pleasure, lapping it up. Above all, she enjoys herself, swinging her body that says, me, 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 me. Why not have a good time? As long as you amuse me, go on. I like you slobbering over my hand, big boy. I have a right to. Come up to my apartment, big boy. Most convincing, we know all this not by her preaching, but by her presence. It's no act. Every word and look and movement spells independence. She likes being herself. And we who don't can only look on, astonished. All right. Now it's time to get the mood right. I like to dim the lights. Let me turn that off. But gotta have my little lamp light on here so I can read what I'm reading. Right? Okay. I think we're starting chapter 7. Yes, we are. We're starting chapter 7 of Obligated Whisper. The Obligated Whisper. So you can get this book on Amazon as a paperback and at lulu.com as a hardcover. I'm reading from the hardcover. But it's easier to get to those links just by going to gullarudebooks.com. Here we go. Let's get this show on the road. It's about 9:30. I got a little bit of a late start today. Do we need any more lights? I don't think so. We got Hank back there blinking his skull eyeballs. That's good. All right, here we go. Okay. I look a little spookier tonight for some reason. It's the lighting. It's all in the fucking lighting. Here we go. All right. Can you see that? That's another Christmas tree. Okay. Chapter 7, Bernie and Suzanne. All right. Okay. It is easy to be brave from a safe distance. Omaha proverb. Women who are married never let their men hang up. There's always 2 peas in every populated pod. You are not even close to my close. Certain prayers from certain people are uncertain. I could have told you I was able to be more open, but I was afraid. Let there be lightsabers. Let there be bees. Let my bee abilities be. Speaking words of wisdom, let there be light. Heavens to Murgatroyd. What the hell is a Murgatroyd? Smelling stronger every day. Singing as the Chicago melody. 25 or 6 to 4? Make up your mind, Chicago. How can Alf be an extraterrestrial? He's the star. Enough NFL. More pigskin. They were playing their favorite made-up game, a game they called WTFT, or What's the First Thing, a kind of stream of consciousness wordplay that stood for what's the first thing that pops into your mind. Another title they gave it was what Suzanne liked to call WTFWT, or what the fuck was that? No matter how silly or convolutedly surreal, Bernie would say whatever jargon that randomly came to mind as Suzanne gave a rapid-fire tag by saying what words she was thinking. It was as if they were talking in their sleep at times, with some lucky punchlines now and then. It got that nonsensical. Often they'd end up laughing until they weren't able to keep the rhythm and playoff pace going, and that would be the end of it. Phew, Suzanne, you outwitted me once again. Not an easy task, answered the dirty long-haired blonde, getting a cup of water from their dispenser. Both Bernie and Suzanne were nuclear engineer specialists at the Hanford facility in Washington State. They worked in a branch which specialized with concerns for both nuclear energy and weapons, but their task primarily was focused to help clean up the old war machine plant from decades prior. Both were trained in the sciences, and though their official titles were that of engineers, they served as a liaison between any military units where either miscommunication or misdirection appeared to be brewing. They were sent to study, report on, and advise the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the Department of Energy, and sometimes the Bureau of Indian Affairs. The Hanford Waste Treatment Plant and other such storage areas for nuclear waste were often near Native American reservations. And if they weren't yet, there were plans to persuade the indigenous peoples for allowing dumping and storage of waste directly onto their lands. Pretty big hurricane in the Carolinas, Suzanne muttered, looking at the news. The item of the day was Hurricane Hugo as she watched from her small computer screen. Bernie and Suzanne shared an office space together. Computers had become commonplace within government offices like theirs. It was 1989, and the internet had just become mainstream among researchers. And then in parentheses, within the United States university system, every professor and graduate student in a research-oriented field could expect to have email their peers as well. This went for government offices and large energy corporations like Hanford, especially within the research departments. The internet went mainstream among Silicon Valley movers and shakers by mid-1995, and then most United States households by 2001. It's a little, reminder of the history of computers when they started. Bernie Morrison was Suzanne Royce's senior by only a couple years on the task force, but they were both close to the same age, Bernie being 35 and Suzanne 33 in that year of 1989. The hurricane Suzanne was mentioning soon became the talk of the nation, and in the end caused $7 billion in damage. But the BS team, as they enjoyed calling themselves, had more pressing matters to be concerned with locally. The Hanford site itself sits on 586 square miles of shrub-steeped desert in southeastern Washington state. Beginning in 1943, the site was used to produce plutonium for the bombs which were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. After the war, production was ramped up again in 1947 to meet the so-called challenges of the Cold War. These activities continued until 1987 when the last reactor closed its operation. Weapons production processes left solid and liquid wastes which posed a risk to the local environment, including the Columbia River. In the year Suzanne and Bernie began to take their job most seriously, 1989, the United States Department of Energy, or DOE, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, and the Washington State Department of Ecology entered into a legally binding accord, the Tri-Party Agreement, which they call the TPA. Its goal to clean up the Hanford site. Bernie and Suzanne were heads of the TPA, along with a line of networkers in all the departments mentioned. Brittle vessels, leaky valves, cracked tubing, corroded piping, and general concerns for the long-standing safety of the facilities were just a few of the checklists these people began focusing their attentions onto. The stated requirements of a geological storage site is to prevent leakage and seepage of waste for at least 500,000 years. But in the Yucca Mountain site for nuclear waste storage in Nevada, for example, that 500,000 year mandate will never be achieved. For one, contaminated water from corroded casts could seep into groundwater and easily spread to Amargosa Valley, which could then spread to nearby farming areas and protected species habitat by additionally producing radioactive springs. Secondly, a volcanic event could lead to magma intrusion into the tunnels where the waste is stored, melting the canisters. If such an event opened a path to the surface, radioactivity could be spread around the landscape. Thirdly, radioactive chlorine-36 had been found deep inside the so-called waterproof mountain. This isotope could have come only from atmospheric nuclear testing performed in the 1950s and the 1960s, which means water penetrated the mountain in fewer than 50 years, thousands of times faster than was estimated by the DOE. I'm going to take a sip here. Fourthly, the engineers and scientists underestimated the amounts of water that was dissolved inside the mountain. Conditions were supposed to be relatively dry, so the metal casts containing the radiation would not corrode over time. It was expected the climate would become much wetter in the future, which would likely increase infiltration. And fifthly, Yucca Mountain was located in an active earthquake zone, and at least 33 known active faults passed within 20 miles of the mountain, some within the proposed repository itself. And sixthly, part of Yucca Mountain was below the Nellis Air Force Base's flight training region. This was where new military jets and pilots were tested. It was also used for war exercises involving both United States pilots and pilots from other allied countries. Needless to say, crashes were not unusual. Initially, the Yucca site was thought to be simple, and the geology and site characterization would be easy to work. Yet, in retrospect, Yucca Mountain was a particularly bad choice, despite DOE's insistence with their commitment to proceed with the Yucca Mountain project. And all that came from the United States presidential administration's I forget what I'm writing here. I thought that was a footnote, but it's not. The United States presidential administrations continue to submit formal applications to persist. That's what I was saying there. I kind of goofed there. All right, here we go. Never in its 76-year history has the nuclear industry taken responsibility for the massive amounts of profoundly lethal radioactive waste it has continued to produce at an ever-increasing pace. As it is impossible to fathom the concept of infinity of time and space, so it is impossible to comprehend the true gravity of mutagenic carcinogens lasting for 500,000 years. Radioactive waste comes in various forms and guises. Of them all, the most dangerous is high-level waste, extremely concentrated waste, pulsing with intensely energetic radioactive elements, emanating both from the production of plutonium for nuclear weapons and from radioactive spent fuel from nuclear power reactors. For centuries, the Hanford area bordering the Columbia River was home to several tribes of Native Americans. Remnants, artifacts, and burial sites are found throughout the Hanford site and its surrounding acreages. The mid-1800s brought pioneers and settlers to the mid-Columbia. The smaller towns of White Bluffs and Hanford sprang into being to support the farms and ranchers of early white residents. When the U.S. War Department decided to locate portions of the Manhattan Project to this part of Washington, it simultaneously committed itself to work on the development of atomic weapons there in total secret. Subsequently, in early 1943, all the residents of White Bluffs and Hanford were told to evacuate their homes and abandon their farms. They were given only 30 days and a small amount of money to do so. Once the residents of White Bluffs and Hanford moved away, the War Department began the process of recruiting workers to build nuclear reactors and processing facilities required to extract plutonium for atomic weapons. People from all over the country came to Hanford, eventually forming a 51,000-person workforce. Very few of them knew what they were building or what the facilities would do once they were completed. The Hanford employees believed they were doing important war work, but beyond that, few details were known. Some noted scientists like Enrico Fermi supervised, and crews began the careful process of building production reactors at Hanford. Workers also built two massive processing facilities called canyons, where plutonium would be extracted from uranium fuel rods after removal from the reactors. In tandem with the secret partnerships in Los Alamos, New Mexico, and Oak Ridge, Tennessee, two new bombs were getting readied for the war effort. One using uranium, the other plutonium, with different triggering devices for each one. The entire project mobilized top scientists and engineers, and at unprecedented high costs. Oops. Uh-oh. Did I lose my page? Hold on. The Hanford plant was the world's first plutonium factory, where the plutonium for the Trinity, New Mexico test bomb, the Nagasaki bomb, was made. Water tank over there. Post-World War II tensions between the U.S. and Russia brought about the Cold War and drove continued atomic weapons production and Hanford's plutonium mission. Additional reactors were constructed next to the Columbia River as the two nations began to develop and stockpile nuclear weapons. In 1959, construction began on the last Hanford reactor, dubbed simply N. Hey, Sonny! Sonny, even though he's been neutered, likes to bother Sally sometimes, and sometimes you just have to shout at him, and then he disengages his fake penis or whatever. Okay, additional reactors were constructed at the N. The N reactor was a dual-purpose facility which produced plutonium for atomic weapons as well as steam for generating electricity. John F. Kennedy came to Hanford in September of 1963 for its dedication. It was so advanced. Starting in the 1960s through 1971, the old reactors were shut down, leaving only the nation's unique dual-purpose reactor N operating on the site. Hold on, just... On the eve of Bernie Morrison's hiring by Bechtel National, the N reactor was still continuing its operation of producing plutonium and electricity until 1987. But from Bernie's entrance in 1978 and on, Hanford's mission was to eventually clean up the site after years of weapons production activities. Suzanne Royce was hired only months later. They were soon working in the same department with the same goal: to see that operations for the world's, quote, largest radioactive waste treatment plant for dough, unquote, was effective, cost efficient, and most importantly, safe. All that waste, a byproduct of national defense plutonium production efforts during World War II and the subsequent Cold War era, resided in 177 aging underground tanks. Of these, more than 1/3 had already leaked, contaminating the subsurface and threatening the Columbia River. It was October 1989, and Halloween was just 2 weeks away. Gonna see that new film, Bernie? On our favorite boys? Boys? What boys? You didn't hear? There's a movie on the bomb coming out. It's called Fat Man and Little Boy. Oh, those boys. I don't know, Susie. Not much for movies, especially since Sadie and I split. Paul Newman's in it. Come on, Bernie, see it with me. I'll drive. Suzanne begged. She really wanted to see this film. Her pleading wasn't a romantic ploy. Although she had a recent breakup as well, her intent was not in the least to seek the affection of Bernie. Even though they were both now single, she just enjoyed his company so very much. And here was a film they both could enjoy, a film with both their mutual interests. Besides, work had been getting grueling of late. He's at it again. Sonny! 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 I guess there's a pause button on this, probably. But you just get all the drama with my cats here, don't you? With me. Oh. He's a really sweet cat, Sonny is. He just sometimes gets horny when he's got this he only does this to Sally, my oldest black cat. He gets excited when she's around. Okay. Besides, work had been getting grueling of late. Bernie was jingling the keys to his pickup within his left jeans pocket. His other hand was on the doorknob to their office. Oh, he sighed. All right. What time? I'll pick you up at 7:30. It starts at 8. If you want, we could go get some Thai food afterwards. Sure. Okay, see you then. Sadie Semler also worked at Bechtel, but several buildings away in administration. She answered the phones, filed classified papers, and set up meetings for high-profile executives. It was the employee relationship that broke hers and Bernie's hearts. It was unable to weather their political differences. Sadie was pro-Hanford all the way, whereas Bernie was for a pro-eventual Hanford 100% shutdown. Now, in separate departments, they only rarely walked by each other, with the occasional hello, within the many-halled, many-acred buildings of Hanford. Punctual as ever, Suzanne pulled up to Bernie's apartment in her bright orange VW Thing. She loved that funky vehicle. It had the hint of military design with the edge of hippie-era glow mint green optimism. She even had an American flag decal in fluorescent reds and blues on the back, plastered next to a daisy sticker which read, "Make love, not war." It always needed tune-ups, but was as reliable as a vehicle as she ever had. When the film was over, they headed to the Thai restaurant in Hanford. Once seated, they shared their thoughts. That part where Cusack's character says, "Everybody should make it, except me. I'm dead." That really got to me, Bern. I think he was based on Harry Daghlian or Louis Slotin, or both. Yeah, a little artistic license, but they both died from radiation exposure. Slotin's accident and death happened after the 2 bombs dropped on Japan. He died young, and then there was a similar mishap less than just 2 weeks after the Nagasaki bomb, which killed Daghlian. Both happened from the same plutonium core. Yep, Suzanne sighed. We started calling it the Demon Core ever since. The crap we're trying to clean up right now. That's the end of chapter 7. Oh, we got plenty of time. Let's keep going. Chapter 8. Flashback 1945. Moontree, Skipet, and Dune. What is past and cannot be prevented should not be grieved for. Pawnee proverb. The sound was deafening deep within the American soil on that pre-dawn morning of 1945. But who could be affected? Who could care less? No one would find out anyway. Not a soul. It was only a test. Who would care less? Careless? Yes, of course. Careless. But carelessly and curiously enough, some people were affected. Affected in a way the government could never have even imagined. And 50 years later and onward, Geiger counters would still click, click, click the radioactive ionizing particles where the world's first atomic bomb exploded in all its supercilious glory. Military men and scientists, goggles firmly rubber suction to their eyes, the only witnesses to its surreal light show. God in earnest. Will the shaking never stop? Someone cried loudly to no one. Then one of the ifs from another cavern came screaming towards the huddled group. Call Salaman and Moontree, and Skipet too. 7 ifs tried to stand, though it was difficult, partly due to the remaining tremors and partly due to their own fears. What is it? Shaterlin asked her brother Dunefall. It doesn't feel anything like a mother heart attack. Mother Earth or Mother Heart Attack, if speak for earthquake. You're right, it can't be. It comes with a smell that is evil. It doesn't belong to the mother's way, Dunefall said, stepping over a fallen and shattered stalactite. When they reached Great Hall, the huge cavern room resplendent with gorgeous rock formations, stalactites, stalagmites, and ribboned halls of iridescent colors, Moontree, Salaman, and Skipet were already waiting. 1,348 ifs were there, with them still as the unbending saguaro cacti. I'm sorry, let me say that again. 1,348 ifs were there, with them still as the unbending saguaro cacti of the desert. Enough were assembled for Salaman, the leader of the clan, to begin official directives. We don't have any ideas what caused this severe disruption to our lives. not where its source comes from, but my spirit leads me to believe it may be from the Tall One's hands. It reeks of chic. This destruction reminds me of the firequakes we experienced in the time of the relocation. We thought we had become safe by moving this deep into Mother's womb. We made the bowels of the earth our home. Where Mother keeps her darkest secrets, we found our new abode. She did not expel us. She welcomed us. She wept with us. She knew our sorrows. She was all we needed to know. It was right. It was right to leave the upper world. We learned to adapt and to love our most dark habitat. The quiet is our friend, and today we are reminded that this earth is still not ours alone. Can we go deeper? Should we go deeper? Do we funny ourselves into thinking we know how to survive in the unknown regions? I can't tell you, friends. I don't know. Not today, do I? By now, all the ifs were in an impromptu circle. Row after row of bald heads surrounded Salaman's throne, the short stump of a colorful, thick stalagmite that had carvings with likenesses of spirits and animals from the most higher places. A few hundred more made their way in. The ifs, at a glance, appeared to be a clone of one another, their large eyes embedded within their salmon-colored, ageless skin. But upon closer observation, subtle differences were there. Facial expressions, mouth shapes, brows, eye movements, all varied enough to set each person apart from the other. The older ifs, like Salaman, who at age 96 had very thin, almost translucent skin, and at times of stress or excitement, the blood pumping beneath the skin could actually be vaguely seen. But the wrinkles of age were sometimes indiscernible due to the lack of ultraviolet rays ifs were rarely exposed to, even within the 400-year span of being full-time cave dwellers. If an if died of skin cancer, it was so rare, everyone deemed it was the Creator's will. And the one who contracted such an infrequent visitation was honored with great ceremony, both upon hospice care and after during funeral rituals. We will wait for the day's close, Salaman continued, at least until the rest of us show up. By tomorrow, during the rustling of bat wings, we should know what is the status for the rest of our city. The thing I can't express clearly enough is how surprised I am at this. I will need time to think and to counsel with the other elders. So please be patient and be wise in your own counsels. That is all I can share for the moment. Children, this is not a time to stray. Stay indoors. Steam Lim and Andersalt, a young lesbian couple, Steam Lim being 54, Andersalt 60, were in the midst of the Orion passages. Loosely translated, they were named after the constellation humans call Orion because of the glittering salt and mineral deposits on its walls. But they were blocked off from their attempts to reach the great meeting place of Great Hall, the place all ifs were expected to gather in times of emergency. 5 gigantic wall boulders had dislodged from the walls, broken like skulls from an axe, plugging up their path like huge corks. Andersalt was frightened, and though older, was always the more easily triggered of the two. She asked Steam Lim for comfort. Please, Steam Lim, I'm frightened. I feel weak in my heart. Tell me something that will help my thinking. Ifs never were afraid to share their personal vulnerabilities with one another. It was a trait honorable to their trusting natures, but more so, it was a survival trait. By being fearless in letting someone else know they needed help, the Ifs were more ready to adapt to a cold and unfriendly environment, which decades upon decades of unheard of inhumanities had forced them to live under. Not now, Steamlim offered her wife. Don't think now. Only breathe. Slow, steady breaths like this. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And by only breathing, Andersalt was able to steady her heart. Steamlim continued to make slow, exaggerated, puffing sounds from her small lungs. Soon Andersalt was imitating her soulmate, their torsos rising and falling like a silhouetted mirror in the darkness. Her head began to clear a bit. Within minutes, they curled into each other's laps, falling into a deep sleep. Sorry, I got a kitten that keeps wanting to jump up on my lap, and she doesn't know what I'm doing. Tulip, go away. Go away. I'll be with you later. Children. Kittens. All right. Okay, where was I? Okay. Damage reports, if one could call them that, for most of the damage was so devastating little remained of most of their city, began coming in from some of the scouts. Hallways and long passageways were entirely caved in. Intricately carved rock beds with some of the If's proudest art were buried, never to be seen again. Miles of their civilization were erased, as if nothing had ever existed there before but caves and bat guano. And then, slowly, the reports of missing loved ones discovered dead came in. Ifs are sensitive, yet to provoke tears from one is a rare sight and sound. But death hits every creature hard. A wailing, as had not been remembered, began to echo and echolocate throughout the caves. To those who had missing but unfound loved ones, the wailing only contributed to their own anxiety, their worst fears. Over 220 Ifs were dead. See if my children and grandchildren are heard of, Salomon told a scout by the name of Skippet. Anything you hear, no matter how obscure, hopeful or not hopeful, tell me. Moontree, a close friend of Skippet's and a fellow scout, was about to do the same when Salaman stopped him. Wait, Moontree. Stay here in the meeting place. I'm not one to play favorites, but you're like a son to me. Nah, Salaman, Moontree said in an eerily cheerful way, given the mood of everybody. Socially speaking, Moontree had a strange way about him. He often tried to psychologically better his friends' depressions or worries by acting overly optimistic, even if he didn't feel overly optimistic himself. He was kind of a cheerleader. At times, even his closest friends rolled their eyes behind his back when such attempts were so obviously forced. And yet, it was part of Moontree's character that also endeared him to people. Everybody knew he was only wanting to be of help, to be of use. Nah. I'm going to look for any of the children I can, Salaman. I have no family like you, and I feel like a stalactite waiting here when all my friends are out in the tunnels. I'll send you word as soon as I come across your grandpups. Salomon said nothing. He squinted his large black eyes at Moontree, what ifs often did when showing deep respect and wordless best wishes. Moontree squinted back and went off in the same direction as Skippet. When Moontree reached his first obstacle, a pile of rocks and dust, blocking some of the main passageways to Great Hall, he started digging through it with a loose stalactite. Seeing this was quickly becoming futile, he threw the staff to the ground and retraced his steps and almost inadvertently made it back to Great Hall again. When he started down the long and wide tunnel called the Loom Room, for it seemed to many to be more of a room than a tunnel because of its girth, he was able to climb over boulders and fallen debris until he found other ifs. Some were wounded, and some were dead. So many ifs lived up until this time in the mid-40s for an endangered race.